Pranks. Most of us have pulled one. We tell ourselves it's all in good fun, just a harmless laugh. But sometimes the joke goes too far. Sometimes the consequences are real. Tonight, we're investigating 3 true stories of pranks that took terrifying turns and went completely wrong. They're stories that will make you think twice before ever going in the woods with your friends, pressing send, or knocking on that door. Let's begin. I thought it would be a weekend of laughter and relaxation, just 4 friends camping deep in the woods. Luke had found the campsite online, a hidden spot that wasn't on any official maps. He called it our chance to get away from everything. The drive out felt endless. The last stretch was a rough dirt road that rattled the car and sent our gear bouncing around. We laughed every time we hit a bump, but as soon as the car stopped in the clearing, the mood changed. The place was too quiet. No rustling leaves, no birds, not even a breeze. All I could hear was the car engine ticking as it cooled. Luke broke the silence. "We made it," he said, but his grin didn't reach his eyes. We unloaded our gear and set up the tents. The quiet clung to the air as we gathered firewood and started the fire. The crackling flames felt like the only thing keeping the darkness from swallowing us whole. By nightfall, we sat close to the fire, warming our hands and trying to shake off the weird vibe. Ben was the first to break the tension. He always was. He leaned in and started telling a story about a hunter who disappeared in these woods years ago. According to Ben, people claimed to hear snapping branches and faint footsteps when they camped here, as if the hunter was still out there watching. Some say he went feral, Ben added. Just lost it. I tried to laugh it off, but it felt forced. The fire was burning down to embers, and the shadows of the trees stretched long and thin around us. The story shouldn't have gotten to me, but it did. We turned in for the night. The second I lay down in my sleeping bag, I felt how heavy the silence was outside. Every small rustle sounded like it was right next to the tent. Sometime after midnight, I felt a nudge. I opened my eyes and saw Luke crouched next to me. "Come on," he whispered. "Let's freak out, Sarah." I hesitated, but got up anyway. We grabbed a couple of sticks and crept around to her tent. The cold stung my face as we moved, our breaths hanging in the air. Luke snapped a branch loudly. The crack echoed through the trees. We waited. Nothing. Luke snickered and broke another stick. I was just about to do the same when I heard something else. A faint snap, farther into the woods. I froze. "Did you hear that?" I whispered. Luke's grin disappeared. We both stared into the darkness. Another snap. This one was closer. "Ben," I called quietly, hoping he'd followed us to mess with us. No answer. Luke pulled out his phone and turned on the flashlight. The narrow beam barely pierced the dark, but it was enough to see the outline of someone standing between the trees. My chest tightened. It wasn't Ben. The figure was taller and broader, dressed in dark, worn-out clothes. "Who the hell?" Luke whispered, but his voice trailed off. The figure didn't move. "We need to go," I said, my voice barely above a breath. We backed away slowly, but the moment we reached the edge of the tent, the figure lunged. We scrambled inside and zipped the tent shut. Sarah shot up, eyes wide. "What's going on?" "There's someone out there," I gasped. Ben groaned, rubbing his face. "Are you serious?" Luke grabbed the flashlight and handed it to Ben. "Look for yourself." Ben unzipped the tent and aimed the light outside. Nothing, just trees and shadows. "You're both paranoid," Ben muttered. Luke and I sat there, rigid, every nerve on edge. We didn't sleep the rest of the night. Every creak, every rustle felt like it was getting closer. When the first light of dawn hit the clearing, we packed up in silence and left. No breakfast, no jokes. Just the sound of our footsteps and the weight of something we couldn't explain. On the drive home, no one spoke. The silence was thick until Sarah finally whispered, "We weren't alone." No one argued. A week later, Luke sent me a news link. A man, presumed to be missing for years, had been found living in the woods not far from where we camped. The article said he'd been surviving off the land, avoiding people. The picture showed a hollow-eyed man with matted hair and sunken cheeks. Luke texted me, "Tell me again it was all in our heads." I stared at the message for a long time before closing the app. I didn't want to think about it anymore. We thought it would be harmless fun, just a stupid game of doorbell ditching to kill time on a slow summer evening. It was me, Connor, James, and Will. 4 friends desperate for a fun night. There was this one house on the block that we always joked about. Mr. Harlan lived there alone. He was reclusive and mean, the type of neighbor who would yell at kids for cutting across his lawn. We didn't really know much about him, but the stories we made up filled in the blanks. That day, something felt off even before we got near his house. The heat hung heavy in the air, and the usual street noise felt muted. I remember the hairs on the back of my neck standing up as we walked by Harlan's place. The windows were dark except for the faint blue glow of his TV. The porch light was off, the house as lifeless as always. Connor was the first to bring it up. "Let's hit Harlan's place. It's perfect." I didn't want to. There was something about that house that made my stomach knot. But James and Will were already nodding, eager for a laugh. I didn't want to be the only one to chicken out. We waited until it was dark, then circled back. The street was quiet, the crickets loud in the silence. I was the one who went up to the door. My palms were clammy as I climbed the steps. The porch felt unnaturally cold under my shoes. My gut screamed at me to turn around, but I pressed the doorbell anyway. The chime echoed inside, sharp and mechanical. I sprinted back, heart pounding, and ducked behind the bushes where the others waited. We covered our mouths to muffle our laughter as we waited for the door to open. But it didn't. The seconds dragged on. Nothing. James whispered, "Maybe he's asleep." Connor elbowed me. "Do it again." I hesitated, my stomach tightening, but I went back and jabbed the button twice before running back to the bushes. This time, there was movement, a shadow crossing the window, but the door didn't open. "That's weird," Will muttered. The door creaked open a moment later, slow and deliberate. We leaned forward to get a better look, but Mr. Harlan wasn't standing there. The doorway was empty, the darkness inside the house stretching out like a cave. A chill ran through me. Something about the open door felt wrong. We stayed hidden, expecting him to step out, but he didn't. Then came the sound of footsteps, not from the porch, but from the side of the house. My heart jumped into my throat. I turned just in time to see a shadow moving along the side yard. Mr. Harlan stepped into view, his face barely visible in the dim light. He wasn't shouting or scowling, he just stared at us with a blank expression. "He's coming," I whispered. Before anyone could react, he started running. We bolted. I heard Will shout something as we scattered in different directions. My lungs burned as I sprinted toward the park at the end of the street. I didn't dare look back, but I could hear his footsteps, steady and fast. I dove behind a tree and pressed my back against it, gasping for air. A second later, Connor slid in next to me, panting. "Where's James? Will?" I asked. Connor just shook his head. We stayed there, listening, the blood rushing in our ears. The footsteps had stopped. We eventually crept out and made our way home, taking different paths to avoid being followed. When I got to Connor's house, I saw that James and Will had made it back too. None of us said much. We didn't sleep that night, and we didn't bring it up again the next day. It was like we'd all silently agreed to pretend it never happened. A week later, I was riding my bike past Harlan's house when I saw his front door was wide open again. This time, there was a note taped to it. It read, "Next time I'll catch you." It started as a joke. Connor had found this crazy website where people posted dares for live streams, things like chugging hot sauce or dancing in public. But one thread caught our attention. Find someone random and prank them. The idea was to pick a stranger, figure out their contact info, and pull a prank during the live stream. It sounded harmless enough. We set up the stream late one night in Connor's room. It was just me, Connor, and Will. After scrolling through profiles, we settled on a guy named Evan. His latest post was a blurry picture of his dinner with the caption, "Another night in." He looked like a loser. Perfect. Connor quickly found his contact info through an old group project he'd posted months ago. It felt way too easy. Using a burner texting app, Connor sent a message, "I'm watching you." The chat lit up with laughing emojis and comments. At first, there was no reply. Then, minutes later, Connor sent another message, "I see you sitting at the table." The response came almost immediately. "Who is this?" We were all grinning, waiting for his reaction to escalate. But then my phone buzzed with a new message. "Why are you doing this?" I stared at the screen, confused. The number wasn't familiar. I showed it to Connor and Will. They exchanged a nervous glance but tried to brush it off. We were all questioning how he had my number when I wasn't the one texting him. Another message came through. "It's not funny." Then, "I'm outside." Connor clicked over to Evan's profile again. The dinner post was gone. In its place was a new picture. A shot of our street, taken at night. How did he get outside our house so fast? It seemed fake. The room went silent. Will shifted in his chair, eyes wide. "That's our street," he muttered. Connor got up and locked the door. We shut off the stream. All the laughter was gone. Another buzz. Opened the door. We sat frozen. Then came the knock. It wasn't loud, just a soft tap, almost polite. No one moved. A second knock followed. Then nothing. We stayed like that for what felt like an eternity. When the sun finally began to rise, the tension broke. Connor got fed up with it, unlocked the door and swung it open. The porch was empty. The street was quiet, bathed in the early morning glow. We never figured out who sent the messages, or if it was even Evan. We didn't want to know. We deleted the stream that morning and never did another prank again. Sometimes, the joke just isn't worth it. Thanks for watching. If you have a story about a prank gone wrong, or any other creepy experiences you want to share, send it to me on TikTok at The Morbid World. We'd love to feature your story. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more stories, and drop a comment below. Let me know what kind of stories you want to see next.